Hello, everybody. You are watching Club Fantasci. I'm David Lowry, your host, and we are talking with Sean Brown of Mr. B Games, and we're going to be talking about the new game Realm of Heroes, among other things that Mr. B Games has coming out. Sean, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, David, for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so you got a new game coming to Kickstarter on the 27th, I believe, correct?
That's correct. It's called Realm of Heroes.
So why don't you tell us, give us like a 2-minute synopsis of what that game is?
Okay. So Realm of Heroes is a strategy game currently set up for 2 to 4 players, although we'll be working on a fifth and a sixth-player expansion via the campaign. And the idea is you build this this realm or kingdom by using these kinds of tiles.
Okay.
That would be like a field. That would be a forest. And then you have these mountain type tiles. So you're going to make a map. You can do it by random, or we have several preset maps in the book. Uh, and then what everybody's doing is what's happened is the king is passed, and we're all nobles who are trying to claim the throne for our own country or city state or whatnot. And we're going to do that by recruiting peasants at our different facilities. So at the start of the game, everybody's going to start out with a leader,
Okay.
and a tower. These are prototype pieces. Sorry, I haven't got the the final stuff done yet. And from those, you can recruit peasants every turn, and then you can start training your peasants into different character classes. And each time you train to a different class, you get a new ability. So, like maybe you go the apprentice path. Apprentices are really good at healing plague. And what happens in this game is plague kind of spreads all over the kingdom, and you can always keep it in check. You just move into a square that has plague, and the plague goes away. But if you were an apprentice, you could actually move in, take care of the one you're in, and heal one adjacently to where you are. And then if you became an upper level apprentice and you became a sorcerer, which you do have final art, it looks like this guy. So if you become this guy, you can actually heal plague that's adjacent to every square that you're touching.
Nice.
So there's basically level ups in classes. So as you start out with one character, there's always a stronger version. And basically, it's area control. So we're trying to take over the most territory. You have to have those fields to support the units that you're making, and then ultimately you're trying to capture each other player's leader.
All right. So,
The
go
cool
ahead.
thing about it is the game, a two-player game can be over in like 10, 15 minutes. A four-player game will last, maybe a little less than an hour.
So it's a
Uh,
short game. Nice.
yeah, but it's got a lot of depth, and there's some really good, different variants you can do. Really cool things you can do with the mountains. You can make ridges in the center of the board, which will slow the game down, or add different layers. And also in first time playing, sometimes the games go really quick, like 5-10 minutes, because the game has kind of a a learning curve. So when you're first learning, you maybe don't necessarily know how all the powers are going to work with all the characters. But the cool thing is, if you get knocked out of the game, you can just play another game, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later.
So now, this is going live in a week. How much money are you going to try to raise for your Kickstarter campaign?
Uh, you know, it was an interesting thing when this one came to me. There's an interesting story how it came to me, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm collaborating with Scott Demers, who's the designer of this game, and we set a pretty low goal. I think a pretty low goal, because really at this point, this game is kind of where we have it, or where we're presenting it, how we want to present it, is that we want to try to make this about a $25 game to backers. It'll probably be in the 35 or so range later, maybe 40 at MSRP. So we don't necessarily need to have a really big goal to do a small print run of it. And I'm hoping that we can do really well, and we wouldn't have to do a small print run. But we set the goal at 10,000, which we broke down all of our costs, and 10,000 probably wouldn't cover the full production of the game, but I'm willing to put up some company money to make it if we just barely fund. But I think with all the really cool bells and whistles we have, fingers crossed
Right.
that That wasn't my middle finger, by the way. That was actually crossed. But fingers crossed that we could actually, we could go through that and then, start unlocking a lot of these ideas that Scott has for stretch goals.
So one of the things that usually gets asked to me first when I start promoting these games on my social media accounts is, are there any reviews out? Did you guys mail out copies to people to review so they'd be able to get an idea, of thoughts on the game?
We did. We actually have 2 review copies out with 2 different reviewers currently. On Board Games, I believe, is one of them, and oh, it's gonna kill me that I forgot the name of the other one. Geekcraft is the name
Okay.
of the other one. So
Ken.
yeah, both of those gentlemen, we had shared the link for the Kickstarter. We have kind of the page already built up, and we're just kind of making some changes, adding graphics. And what I do typically is I'll kind of ping on people that I know and just say, hey, does this look like something that you might be interested in? Because I've always found as a reviewer you might be able to relate to this. It's always tough when you get something and you're just not interested in it, or it's not your cup of tea. It's hard to review it subjectively. I mean, I think you can always do a review of it, but if it's something that you look at and you go, wow, that looks cool, I think it has a better effect. And that's kind of what I looked for in reviews, was somebody who might look at the presentation and say, wow, that looks like something I would be interested in.
Right.
So that's the approach we went with.
Okay. So now this is not your first Kickstarter. So
No.
tell us a little bit about the process prior to launching a Kickstarter campaign.
Well, so the process for me has been very interesting. My background is I came from a big company, big publishing board game company, and so when I kind of went out on my own, I kind of took some lessons I learned from there, but a lot of things that I'd been wanting to do, or kind of my own ideology or kind of way of doing things. I spoke to a lot of people, looked at a lot of different campaigns, tried to get a lot of free advice, I guess, from people out there. And the community's great of people, and I've tried to spread that as well anytime people ask me. But basically through that, the process for me is always I get the game first before I even dream of a Kickstarter. And for me, almost like a review, I have to really enjoy the game, or I don't even want to move forward with it. I've seen games sometimes where you say, this is going to be a giant, huge success for someone, but it's not the game for me.
Right.
And I would pass on it, and it might go to a company and do really well somewhere. But for me personally, if I don't have the passion and I don't believe in it, I have a hard time backing it. So for me, it starts with that. I'm really difficult to deal with prototypes. So when I get prototype submissions, I'm usually very blunt and brutal. So it's really hard for me to find stuff that I really, really like. But when I find them, I really get invested. So with the first one that I did with Alien Uprising, I played it and I just knew, just as soon as I played it, I said, this is going to be just a phenomenal game. And Richard Launius was amazing to work with. The process was fantastic. And we started with a prototype, and along the way we started doing some graphic work, and would hire an artist here and there, and start bringing little things to life. And we built this really cool prototype that we really liked. And we did all that way before we even dreamed of doing a Kickstarter. So for me, the process is usually, when I'm ready to launch a Kickstarter, I've probably been working on the game about 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
And I tend to not work on more than 2 or 3 at a time. But I do like to have a little bit of variety. So usually, over a 6-month period, I might be playtesting 2 or 3 games at the same time. And they'll all be in various stages for me. And whichever one just starts to come to life better, gel better, adjusts to the changes or the tweaks better, then that's the one that's going to, that we'll put up first.
Now, you had an interesting little story with me earlier about how this game came to be, with the, you guys putting it out. Tell us, give the viewers a little bit of that story about how you were approached with this game.
Yeah, so after I wrapped up Alien Uprising, I was working on Spurs, and when I wrapped up Spurs, this is all I do now full time, is Mr. B Games, which is quite a departure for me. So I found myself, I deal either late at night with China or very, very early in the morning, but I had this entire, full days with nothing to do. I mean, I could only do so much with those games once the files are away and being printed. So I started diving into more games, and I'm working on them. And I was at one of my local game nights. I try to hit the local meetups and whatnot. And I ran into a guy. We had talked previously on email, and he said, "Hey, are you going to this session?" I said, "Yeah, we went." And he was showing me his game, and it was phenomenal. I played it and I loved it. I said, "This is really good." And he was telling me how he was going to go to Kickstarter and do this stuff, and he wanted to pick my brain and ask me some things about the process. And I'm an open book, so I said, "Sure, I'll help you out." We got together for lunch one day, and we were talking, and basically he threw me a curveball at lunch, and he just said, "I would feel way more comfortable if you just did this for me." He said, "I think I'm a really good designer. I think I have a really good product. I feel like I am clueless when it comes to how to run it and how to get it sold later." He said, "And it seems like you're really good at this." And he asked me if I would be interested, and I jumped at it because it's not every day that a product. I think he could have gone out and done it all by himself, but it's not every day those opportunities fall in your lap. And I was very excited to work with him. He was amazing. He is amazing to work with. Super easy to work with. And I think he has a brilliant game. And I think it was cool. He identified, of his own kind of on his own. He said to me, "I'm really good at making these, but I don't know how to take it to that next level."
And that's everybody, I think. At some level, they're really good at one thing, but they're not good at the other things, and they need to find those partners to help them implement their overall goal.
I 100% agree. When I worked with Richard Launius on Alien Uprising, I got a design credit, but I got to be honest with you, I couldn't have designed a game like that.
Right.
When it was presented to me, I could work on it and fix things with it, and I was able to add to the experience. And and through the process, Richard wanted me to be his co-designer because he felt I was contributing so much. But I'm not the original designer. I don't come up with that original idea. I think my strong suit would be in developing that idea into something even better. And I've been lucky to work with two guys who brought me really great ideas and allowed me to work with them, with Richard Launius and Ole Steinus. With Scott, he brought me a design that I couldn't do anything with. Right? There was nothing for me to add to it. It was perfect the way it worked. So that's why I didn't think he needed me. But in the end, it worked out to be a great partnership. I'm super excited. It's a perfect addition to the lineup for Mr. B Games. It's a little bit lighter than the first two games, but I mean, strategy-wise, I think it's great. It's no dice, no luck type of a situation. Everybody has access to the exact same items.
Right.
For me, it's kind of a callback to the old games like chess and feudal, with like mixes of like Small World or Magic Realm or things like all these little bits of these older games where you have to make your own luck and your own decisions. And,
yeah, it's pure strategy.
Yeah, pure strategy, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. And so we're gonna go with the put it in a little bit of a smaller box, make it all token based. And hopefully if we do really well, then we can start messing around with stretch goals and come up with, Scott's got notebooks full of all these great things that he's developed over the years, and we'll just start blowing the dust off of them and we'll put that kind of stuff up if we're lucky enough to fund.
Now, tell me a little bit about the theme. Where did that come from, and whose idea was it for the theme?
Again, Scott. This was all Scott's theme. This was his baby. So, I mean, he's been working on the game for almost 10 years. And he told me even in his earliest iteration of the game, it was always a medieval theme. And the idea was always that the king had died. And, we were all the next in line. We all felt we had the lineage to take over the crown. And so we're all basically having a little war, a little power struggle out in the realm. And the idea works. The concept's cool. It's got a really cool upgrade path tree. Currently, there's two different ways you can go. So we've got the way of the sword or the way of magic.
Yeah.
And the way of the sword is you can, when you start out with your peasants, you can decide to train him in the way of the sword. So you can become a warrior, and then you can become either a ranger or a knight from there. And if you went the way of magic, you start out with an apprentice, and then you move on from an apprentice to either a sorcerer, or I forget the other guy. A sorcerer or a wizard. That's why I forgot it.
Almost
Sorcerer.
the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then we're, Scott's got he calls the different character, he's got character classes. He calls them pods, and each pod will introduce a new character class and a couple of new divisions you could go. So we're really excited about that. We like all the ones we've played so far. They all seem to intertwine and work and stack really well on top of each other, and it's just a pretty cool little system. And after him and I having many cups of coffee at Starbucks and just going back and forth over what to do, we decided, you know what, let's go with a low price point. Like I said, I think we're going to shoot for the basic pledge to get the game, that 25, 24 bucks, something like that. And then that's just for a 2 to 4 player game. If you want a 5 or 6 expansion, we'll sell a couple extra token sheets for that and tiles. And just kind of make I don't want to use the term micro game, but kind of a board game that's a little more affordable. It doesn't have any of the plastic miniatures or anything like the last couple games I've made, but a still pretty cool little strategy game, and put it out on Kickstarter and see where we can go. It may turn into, by the time the project's over, we may have to bump it up in box size and make the retail version a $50 game because we put so much cool stuff in it. I would love to do that. But, at a bare minimum, we want to put out the game that we know works really well with all the bits and pieces that we love. And just kind of, we hope people like it enough and they want to support it and help us see where we can go with it.
With the recent surge in Kickstarter, with all the board game publishers, there's got to be, 5 or 10 games a week, it seems, that comes out at least on this Kickstarter.
No, I agree.
And people are, a lot of comments that I see now are, well, I've got to watch my Kickstarter budget, or I've got, because they get so easily wrapped up into purchasing games because, it's exciting.
Right.
Why should people separate their money from their wallet to fund this game?
That's a tough question, and it's always a hard one, right? I mean, it's always a struggle and a balance. And I hate to take away from anyone because I love the idea of the community. I love, like you said, that all these people are making projects. For me, I'm in a tough situation, and the reason I go to Kickstarter is, I came from a bigger company, so in my mind, I kind of know where I want to go, but my funds can't get me there currently.
Right.
And I've gone to the banks and I've tried really hard to get the loans to fund these myself, and the banks just, even with my house as collateral, the banks just will not loan me what I need.
Right.
So for me, it's tough because if I want to keep making games and I want to do 4 or 5 games a year, I've got to get a little bit of help, and a lot of times I'll put a lot of my own money invested with the Kickstarter money to get the projects made. Because I believe in them, I have confidence in them. But that's why I use Kickstarter, is for that extra help on the down payment to get the actual games printed, and then also for the creative process. The community, for me on both projects, the ideas that people send you are so cool sometimes, and you go back to the designer and say, hey, this one guy said, what if you did this one little thing, and it spawns an entire growth of ideas that can make the game that much better. Just one little simple thing, and that's what I love about it. And so for me, why I would hope people would want to support us is because they can be involved in that process with us. They're not going to just pledge on something and we have it up on a screen and this is what it's going to be. They can actually have a voice and be a part of what direction do we take the game.
Now, you said something that I find fairly interesting, because before the Kickstarter, all the designers or all the publishers have put money into it. They've had to pay for artwork, and they've had to pay for, maybe a copyright or whatever it is that they've had to pay for to get it to where it's at. But you're saying on top of that, you're also putting more money into the Kickstarter itself.
Yeah, I did in my case. The games with plastic for me were very expensive, and the costs and everything involved in, it's been difficult. Plus, like you said, all the advertising,
right.
All the artwork, especially too. So I think even when you do go to Kickstarter, I think a lot of people don't realize all the expense that goes into actually bringing one to market.
It's just getting it to Kickstarter alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even having a I know people with Alien Uprising used to say to me, "Oh, well, you did great, right? You did over $100,000 on your first game. Like, you're fine." Well, after fees, you only get about, they take 10%
Right.
basically, so you wind up with 93,000,
Right.
which people say, "Oh, you're whining, right? You can still get it done." But uh, my bill was pretty expensive at the factory, and that money doesn't go as far as everybody thinks. Especially if you're gonna put it back in the product, I
Right.
guess is where I'm getting at. Which is what we did. We bought a lot of molds. We made a lot of plastic figures, and we just kept upgrading the game and putting things in. But to me, it's an investment in the future. I'm investing in the company,
Right.
and to me, this is the same as startup capital. That's what I used it for anyway. I didn't
Well, it
take
is.
a $30,000 payday or put it in my pocket. I invested it all back in the company.
Right. I don't know anybody that's put out 2 or 3 games and has made a lot of money off of any of them. It's not until
No.
you kind of turn the corner, so to speak, where you have built up an audience, and after your Kickstarters, you've got games, people are still buying them. Then your company starts to turn a profit, and you might be able to quit your day job to be able to focus on this company. People have a very funny idea of what it takes to run a company and how much money is really involved to bring them their favorite hobby.
I agree 100%. I've actually spoke with my wife on many occasions of taking a part-time job myself, or even taking a full-time job, uh, because I mean, I've looked at the projection of even Mr. B games probably won't be profitable. Uh, I would hope maybe in 2015, but I don't even project it profitable in 2014.
Right.
Um, but again, it's something I was willing to do and I really wanted to do, and I really wanted to put a really, really good shot at it. But I agree. I think you've got to have 3 or 4 titles out in a row. I think they've got to do all pretty well, and I think you need that life after Kickstarter
Right.
to have a shot. And I'm just trying to build up a library and trying to make it happen. And I hope I can continue to do it for several years to come. And you know, I hope they can continue to do well. But yeah, Kickstarter for me is kind of the beginning of the project. I still think you have to invest a sizable amount of your own money and time
Right.
and energy and efforts to make a successful Kickstarter.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that you've had come out recently. You've done 2 other Kickstarter games. You did. Oh boy, I just spaced them. You go ahead. Tell them. I
Oh,
totally
we did.
spaced it.
No, that's okay. Our first one was Alien Uprising, and
Yeah.
then the second one we did was Spurs.
Right.
And I'll talk about Spurs first because Spurs is actually will be in the United States. I don't want to jinx it, but maybe tomorrow. It's on a container that's supposed to be arriving in harbor very soon. Now, the tricky part about that is just because it lands in harbor doesn't mean I'll get it anytime soon. It could get stuck in customs, could get stuck on the rail. So many things can go wrong. But if everything goes according to plan, I should have that game arrive right around the first week of June, and I'll immediately get orders shipped out. I'm hoping no later than the second week of June, and then I'm going to Origins. So that one's kind of the first one on the horizon, and this will be my first big box miniatures game that actually comes out and is released. And I got a cool prop. Um, Maybe. Oh, there he is. There's the
Look at that.
cowboy.
Look at that cowboy hat. Woohoo!
And then there's a really cool feature we have for player colors. So I've got these bases, kind of hard to see. And then the base is actually, this is a terrible visual, but the bases actually click on, and then that way you can tell player color now.
Nice.
And they're interchangeable, so for people that want to paint their miniatures, you can pop the base off and paint them and then put your base on and still know what color you are.
Right.
So kind of a cool feature I'm super excited about. So that's Spurs. Everything's looking like it'll be that first week of June. If everything goes well, I should have copies for sale at Origins. I've had a couple of distributors that are going to carry the game, so I'm super excited about that. So it should be up in retail stores. Probably third week of June is when you'll see them in retail shops. Maybe end of June. Depends on a couple of factors. And that one actually came out before the project I did before it, which is interesting Because I have people say, well, how's that work? Right? Your first project was done 3 months before, but this one beat it to production. And the difference is with Spurs, we only had 2 or 3 stretch goals, and we only made one little plastic figure, the cowboy, and then we had some dice and some things, some cool features. But with Alien Uprising, I probably had, I don't know, 10 or 12 miniature stretch goals, which means I had to make all these extra figures. And then there was a little bit of a catastrophic problem with one of the sculpts, with a bunch of the sculpts, that kind of put us on a delay. But even after all that, I projected a June release for Alien Uprising, and it looks like I'm going to get it to everybody in July. So, despite all the heartaches and all the headaches and pitfalls, I'm only going to be about a month late on that game, and then Spurs will be right on time. So, I'm super excited about that. And just a little quick shot of the crewmen for Alien Uprising.
Cool.
And some of the aliens.
Now, do you have distribution for those 2 games?
For those 2 games I do. So I got very, very lucky. I went to the Gamma Trade show back in it was February or March, and got a booth out there, and just hustled all weekend long and tried to get appointments with everyone I could who would listen, and just showed them the products, and all the distributors said, okay, the products look great, we're willing to give you a shot, which was great, fantastic. And I know it's really hard to get distribution right off the bat, and it's a double-edged sword too. So your first couple have to be really good, or they'll drop you. So, but I love both of these games. I think they're phenomenal. I think people really enjoy them, and I hope they'll have a really long life in retail. And they've got both of them have great expandability, and I'm very proud to have them in the Mr. B Games lineup, and I hope to have them for many, many years.
Now, let's you possibly have something else come out on the horizon. Is that the rumor I hear?
Yes. So when I wrapped up Spurs, I started working on my next project, and of course, when Scott kind of came to me with this other one, with Realm of Heroes, the one we're launching, it kind of took the front seat, and that's why we're doing it first. But for the past 4 or 5 months, I've been working on another project as well. Very excited about it. It's another first-time designer, Brandon Allen. The game's called Clockwork Kingdom, and it's a steampunk type worker placement game, and I really, really enjoy it. Ton of fun. Very, very thematic. I'm a big fan of worker placements as well, and it's got a lot of really cool elements. It reminds me of games like Stone Age or Age of Empires, or things in that kind of a vein. And it just, for me, it clicks. The theme worked really well. We've got automatons and steam tanks and all this really cool stuff. And it just, for me, it was very thematic, and it scratched an itch I really liked. It almost gave me some of those Through the Ages feelings, without the time, I guess. Plays in more of a traditional time frame, like a 90 minute to 120 minute type scenario. But yeah, we're super excited about that one, and just currently working on getting some artwork done and some graphics, and looking to maybe do that one a little later at the summer, end of summer, maybe early fall, something like that. And then kind of dovetail into the next projects, which I'm currently looking at 2 other things, but they're probably 2015 releases at this point. Maybe I'll do something tail into 2014.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, because you just mentioned something that I keep seeing pop up in some of the game forums, which is about themes and how people are sick and tired of certain themes. And just let me state my position on this before you answer, because I want to clarify.
Sure.
I don't think you can ever get tired of a theme. A good game is a good game no matter what the theme is. People don't look at authors and say, oh, please don't write another vampire book, or oh, please don't write another fantasy book. You read the types of genres that you enjoy because you enjoy them. And I think games are the same way. So now that you're putting out a steampunk theme, game here shortly, and that is one of the genres that I hear pop up every now and then. A lot less than zombies per se, but
Yeah.
still one of those things. How do you guys ever tackle that? What do you think of thematics in games, and can they be overdone? And should people be careful what kind of themes they choose?
That is a good question, and it's a tough one. I think it depends on the person or the company or the individual. For me, I didn't, I think like I agree with you. Steampunk might be a little crowded, but if the game's fun and the theme feels right, then for me, it's a winner. Um, and I know there's a lot of steampunk games out there, and if somebody makes another steampunk game and it's worker placement, everybody, if they're different games, if they feel different, I've been known to do it. I've been known to buy both of them or all three of them, right?
Right.
If the experience is different, then the game is different. It's the same way with the zombie games, right? I mean, they always say that, oh no, another zombie game, right? Zombicide is a lot of fun.
Right.
And then when Darkest came, I remember people, oh no, another Zombicide game, like type game, but it's a fun game. Richard Lonnie's did a Run Fight or Die, a zombie game. Oh no, another zombie game, but it's fun.
Right.
I ultimately backed two of them and bought the third one, so I own all three. I mean, if it's like you said, if it's a genre you enjoy, then it'll do well. And it wouldn't surprise me if Mr. B Games does a zombie game down the road. I'm looking at a pirate game. Full disclosure. I know for a long time people said, "Oh, pirate games no good," but I had a phenomenal pirate game prototype shown to me. It's fantastic, and if I can put it together and we can make it happen, I'd love to do it. And I'm not, I don't steer or scare from the theme.
Right.
But for me, the theme needs to add to the game experience. I'm never a big fan of a pasted-on theme. If you play a game and it has rockets on it or spaceships and it could have just been as easily cars, then, to me, I don't think that's a bad thing, but what I think is it's maybe not a game for me.
Right.
And I know card games sometimes rarely feel like card games. Like a theme in a card game generally feels like you're playing cards with a theme.
Right.
But I find I don't play as many card games as I used to.
That could be. I just think that some people, I don't know if they just want to complain about something or, the case it is. And I think if they went through and looked at their own collection, they would see that they have their own favorites that they tend to collect of a certain theme type. They just don't tend to maybe like zombies as much, so they want to whine about how many zombie games are out or whatever. But I'm a buyer of games. I'm not a buyer of themes.
No, I agree. I think it's a very good analogy. I noticed on your game shelf you had X-Wing and Attack Wing,
Right.
the Star Trek and Star Wars games. And I'll tell you, I've been playing X-Wing quite a bit. I really enjoy it. And then a friend of mine has the Attack Wing, the Star Trek one, and he really enjoys it. But I'm a Star Wars fan. He's a Star Trek fan. Those games are basically identical. They're basically themes pasted on. But when you play the Star Wars game, you feel the universe and you feel the theme.
Right.
And I thought, oh, I'm not going to play Star Trek because I've already owned Star Wars. It's the same thing. But I played Attack Wing, and I felt like I was in the Star Trek universe. They did a great job. Two very similar products that are completely different, even though they work almost identical. And to me, I think I agree with you. That's why I think a theme is just another tool, just like money or cubes.
Right.
Or chits in a game. And I think that's why games are cool, right? I mean, we all use dice to do a maneuver or a card to pick up or play something. And nobody says, oh, you ripped it off from that game or this game or this game, because we ripped it off from every game, right? I mean,
what role-playing game didn't rip off from Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever the case? But what deck builder didn't rip off from Magic the Gathering? So,
right.
Yeah, but sometimes I get frustrated because I think people just want to complain instead of saying, you know what, it's a great game. Doesn't matter what the theme is.
Yeah, I think for the most part a theme can be an interesting storytelling part of the experience, but doesn't necessarily have to judge whether the game is fun.
Right.
But again, to me, so far that in the two I've done, I really feel like the theme is a centerpiece. Where we've really focused where the theme, where in Spurs we had a lot of people say, oh, I'm not a Western fan, but everybody that plays it says, wow, I feel like I'm in a Western. which was a big part of why we created the way we wanted the universe to feel.
Well, I know when I first got into games, it was that broad diversity of the different types of themes that you could put into a game that you never thought would be fun, but completely are.
Oh yeah, there was a game called Preya Porta. It came out a few years ago at Essen. I don't know if you played it or not, but it was you were a fashion designer, so you were making clothing.
Right.
Now, I can't tell you the number of people that were like, "Oh my God, I'm not going to play that." That's a phenomenal game.
Right.
Phenomenal game. Show manager from Queen I used to feel the same way. People were like, "I don't like musicals. I don't want to put on Broadway shows."
Right.
One of my all-time favorite games. That game, they actually rethemed it a few years later to Atlantic Star and put it on like a cruise line. And I have both editions. I think they're both phenomenal, but they both feel different.
Right.
Even though they're the exact same game. So
Right.
it's the theme can definitely play a part for some people, and for others, I think it's just about playing a good game.
Right. So people watching, keep your mind open to the game instead of dismissing it because of the theme. Just because it's a zombie game or a steampunk game or whatever flavor theme is really popular right now doesn't mean it's a bad game or that it can't fit in your collection because you already have a couple themed that way. If they played
or an Old West game like Spurs.
exactly. Right. You know, and that's another thing is there aren't that many Wild West games. There just aren't. So don't avoid it because you're like, oh, that just can't be very good, or or it's not your thing. A lot of people didn't like Western movies until Tombstone came out. Great,
right, myself included.
yeah, great movie no matter what you like. So always keep your mind open and be open to the possibilities of what a game can give you, despite its theme. So, all right, Sean, let's wrap this up. Now, Realm of Heroes comes out on Kickstarter on 27th. That's the launch date, correct?
That's correct.
So, for those of you watching, you can find out more at MrBGames.com. It's right there below his name there on the screen. There is no Kickstarter link yet, so you have to check it. There is a BoardGameGeek page for Realm of Heroes, so just get on the Geek and go ahead and look up Realm of Heroes, and you can find out more about it there. And make sure you stay tuned for what's coming out. I'm sure that we'll have some previews and other things to come out for this game. So, Sean, I want to thank you for your time. I know this was a little bit of a mess trying to get this one organized. Let's just put it that way. But I appreciate you coming on and talking about the game and games in general, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate it, and thanks for giving me a crash course on how to set up my Google Hangouts and being patient with me with all this. It's fantastic, looks great, and super excited, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks. All right, folks. Again, we appreciate you tuning in to watch these interviews. We appreciate everything you do to support Club Fantasci and those that come on our show or, through the links or whatever the case is going to be. Check us out at clubfantasci.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, just Club Fantasci, and also on Google+. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your support. Make sure you go like everybody and jack up their social media stats for them. We appreciate it. There it is, Alien Uprising. All right, folks, I'm signing off. This is David Lowry, and again, thank you so much for your time, and make sure you check out Spurs and Alien Uprising. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Awesome.